Plains Baptist Church is an important institution to understand who Jimmy Carter was as a man, as a politician, as a civic leader locally in Plains, and eventually as a global figure, as a global humanitarian on the world stage. This is the church where Jimmy Carter grew up. His father Earl was a deacon here at the Baptist Church. It's a very important part of Carter's story, not just in his Baptist faith, his Christian faith that he talked about so much, but also his understanding of race relations and how that played in his life. Plains churches, like many churches across the South and across America, were segregated not necessarily by law, but just by custom. So this was an all-white congregation. In the 1950s, just after Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter had returned to Plains, segregation and the possibility of integration in American society was at the forefront, principally because of the Brown v. Board education decision from the United States Supreme Court striking down the separate but equal doctrine, most specifically in America's public schools. Future President Carter was a member of the local school board. In that role, he did not push for integration. He later would explain that he just didn't believe it was possible that it would happen in Plains at that time, even though he privately thought it was inevitable and certainly morally the right thing to do. But here in these walls, in the sanctuary of Plains Baptist Church, Jimmy Carter did stand up for integration as a moral imperative. It became a point of contention in the church whether any black worshipers would be allowed. It was mostly a theoretical debate, but it became a fierce issue in the church and ultimately came to a vote in a church-wide meeting. But he was roundly outvoted. The vote came to more than 100 members voting for exclusion and fewer than 10 members voting for a more open policy. And nearly everyone who was in that distinct minority was a member of the Carter family. Once the Carters made it to the White House, this was still their home congregation. But again, race would become a flashpoint issue, as a local minister at the time here was more progressive on race relations than many of the parishioners. And that pastor eventually left Plains First Baptist. When the Carters returned from the White House, they opted to instead join nearby Maranatha Baptist Church. And that is the church that so many people across the United States and across the world know as the Carters' home congregation through the later years of their life, because that's where President Carter and Mrs. Carter would teach Sunday school and welcome visitors from all over the world most Sundays that they were at home in Plains.